I've been thinking, more specifically about games, the ones I used to play, and how much time I used to dedicate to them. I used to spend hours playing games like Left 4 Dead 2, Castle Crashers, Minecraft, and a normal amount of my youth was dedicated to playing these masterpieces such as these. Nowadays, I don't have much time on my hands to play video games as much as I'd like to, but occasionally I still get free time to revisit a classic or two. A game that stands out from the rest, one that you can visit over and over again and never get tired of it. A game that stands the test of time and still looks beautiful decades later. Of course I'm talking about Zuma, this revolutionary PopCap game. Alright, I'm joking. I'm of course talking about Half-Life 2, which is one of the greatest games ever. Some might even say the greatest game ever. With probably the best story out of any game to come out during the 2000s, there's no other game that I can confidently say I have a loving, symbiotic relationship with. Decades later, I still think about the characters, the environments, the lore, everything about this game. As my memory wanes and I seem to forget most of my childhood memories, I can still remember recording myself playing Highway 17 on my shitty 3DS. Good times. Great times even. An astonishing time was had with this game, I'm just gonna say that. It's hard to describe it if you've never played it, but Half-Life 2 is truly in a realm of its own 2 decades later. If you haven't played it yet, I'm not sure what you're doing, and you should really play it, like right now. The best way to describe what this game does for the player is just how seamlessly everything works together to provide a cohesive, immersive experience, especially the lore. You become so entranced in the game and the active conflict with the Combine that it actually feels like you are Gordon Freeman, like you have some actual connection with Alex and company. Don't get me started on the phenomenal gameplay. At this point, I'm pretty sure you've heard a million times by a million different people how Valve manages to make their gameplay some of the greatest experiences you've ever had, and I'm not here to beat that dead horse. I do want to talk to you about something in this game though. A specific moment in time in this game, if you will. A very odd moment in the story that confused me as a kid, but something I completely understand now. Well, to a degree. I still have my questions. Questions no one on YouTube or anyone have yet to ask or answer. We as a collective society, regardless of race or gender, have skipped over this chapter way too quickly, and I'm here to give it the attention it really deserves. To put this to rest once and for all. It all starts with Black Mesa East. I have my issues with this chapter. I think we can all agree that this is the most dull chapter in the game, and for obvious reasons. The only purpose of Black Mesa East is to provide an update on the characters, including a future Snake, and the current plot of the game. The majority of the chapter consists of the player standing idle in a room, waiting for something interesting to happen. I get that this chapter is supposed to be a break of sorts, a segue into the more advanced and action-heavy second half of the game, but it definitely does not deserve its own chapter. I think it should have been combined with Water Hazard, but I guess I can't complain too much since a Red Letter Day exists. Grievances aside, this chapter actually does serve a purpose aside from character introductions and being a convenient break from the action. It introduces the player to the 0-point energy manipulator, aka the gravity gun, everybody's favorite weapon, if you could call it that. The applications of the gravity gun more so imply that it's a tool of sorts, with the amount of things you can do with it depending on the creativity of the player. You almost have to appreciate how simple the weapon really is, but I think it's that factor that makes the gravity gun so memorable and fun to use. The gravity gun is nothing more than an E-button on steroids, but it's so drastically different from the rest of your weapons that you can't help but enjoy using it. It reminds me a lot of the Taw Cannon from the original Half-Life, if that comparison makes sense. And just like the original Half-Life, our toy needs a playground, a testing ground of sorts, where we can explore the true scope of what our new gun can do. It's not uncommon to see something like this in a Valve-created game, especially when they want to emphasize the importance of a weapon. In the case of a Taw Cannon, there was surface tension, quite literally an open-air huge sandbox where you can fly around and test out the Taw Cannon without much ramifications. Valve flipped what we had become accustomed to prior to this point, closed underground tight quarter levels, just to show how cool a weapon can be in the right conditions. As for the gravity gun, we have an actual playground, a somewhat small filled area with boxes and interactable objects to just introduce us to the gravity gun. If things couldn't get weirder, you play fetch with a robot dog to show just how powerful the weapon can be. It feels like quite a downgrade from what Half-Life did with the Taw Cannon, no? Why would Half-Life 2 only give us this limited space to become accustomed to the gravity gun? If this gun was of such high importance, why not give us a level like surface tension? What's going on? We discover Valve's true intention after leaving the playground with Alex and Dog, which is the name of the robot dog. An emergency occurs, and the player is forced into one area Alex repeatedly told us we shouldn't go, after we become separated. As we venture down the hallway and climb up the ladder, we are introduced to the main topic of today's video. We don't go to Ravenholm. I think you can get what I'm trying to insist here. This is the true playground. A very weird one at that though. This chapter was specifically created to showcase the gravity gun, as clearly demonstrated by the level design of this chapter, but it does so in such a unique way that I haven't really seen before from Valve. The enemies, level design, length of this chapter, environment, sound design, atmosphere, place in the story, difficulty, and so much more contribute to a very unique experience that can be described as unsettling but amazing, even if you haven't played Half-Life 2 before. I should also just state for the record that the only weapons the player has at this point are the crowbar, the pistol, the SMG, including the SMG grenade, and the revolver. I just thought you should know that before we discuss this chapter. Keep it in mind. I guess we should start off with what you see first and discuss what comes in order naturally. The most striking thing that I noticed about this chapter right off the bat was the level design. Compared to a level like Water Hazard, at first it seems extremely striking and unique, but upon closer inspection, not much is different. The gameplay elements do change, drastically at that. But if we just change the atmosphere and lighting, this isn't anything we haven't seen before. We've seen a chapter exactly like this with semi-open level design, phasing in and out of buildings at times. It's called Root Canal. I noticed a lot of similarities between the two chapters, level design wise, especially with places like the train section, you know, where the cop is throwing the explosive barrel down. Root Canal seems to be more open though. Ravenholm has open spaces, but they're often enclosed by apartments or abandoned factory buildings. Earlier, I stated how Valve changed the level design of Half-Life to accommodate the tall cannon. I wonder if I'm saying that right. And how abstract surface tension was. Well, that never really seemed to happen for the gravity gun, or at least that's what it seems like at first. The boxing streets and weird geometry don't fit the gravity gun's explosive nature, if that makes sense. You would expect a drastic change in the level design to accommodate the gravity gun, but aside from the visuals, nothing is out of left field. I think any other developer would have done the opposite, but with the madness comes a reason. And Valve definitely knew what they were doing when they decided to take this approach, but let me save that for later. The most blatant thing aside from the level design in my opinion is the atmosphere. The mood, setting, whatever you want to call it, it's very jarring. That's a word I've heard describe this chapter before. It's nothing like any other chapter in this game, and it definitely helps this chapter stand out from the rest. The unsettling fog in the air and the nighttime atmosphere are only used here, excluding the playground, creating a special atmosphere that unnerves the player. The atmosphere in a way signals to the player that this chapter will be much darker than the rest, and to be more alert than you've previously been. This mystery element is also what I like about the atmosphere. Action isn't constantly fed to you like all of the chapters prior. The stark change from a noisy, action-packed journey to a more quiet, dull environment is one that we can all remember shaking us up a little bit when we first played this game. It also allows for the level design to appear more unique, an illusion of sorts if you will. I'll just say this, if you swap this atmosphere with the setting from a chapter like Water Hazard or whatever, you wouldn't notice this change in level design. The atmosphere reminds me a lot of an early Half-Life mod which many of you have heard of, known as They Hunger. Think of Ravenholm but more open world. It's one of my favorite Half-Life mods of all time, and I think it holds up extremely well decades later. Impressive how one of the earliest Half-Life mods can be more polished than 90% of every mod that preceded it, but I'll give everybody some grace, as this mod was made with an actual team. You can notice a lot of atmospherical similarities between the two games, including the nighttime setting, eerie silence, fog, unsettling design, and much more. Valve was probably inspired by They Hunger when making this chapter, and I wouldn't be surprised if they stated somewhere that this mod helped them inspire the creation of Ravenholm. I don't think this chapter was made with the goal of scaring the player in mind, contrary to what other people might say. Yes, everything I've been saying up to this point contradicts this opinion, but this chapter gives more of an unsettling vibe than scary. You can confidently play this chapter without the fear of being jump scared in mind, or just normally scared, as the level design / obvious nature of the enemies kind of defeats any jump scare the player may encounter. Even though there is a level of mystery and confusion to this level, it was made in mind to give the player a fresh new experience, not to really scare them. I was definitely scared as a kid though, I won't lie about that. As with a good atmosphere comes amazing sound design, the two go hand in hand, and Valve absolutely nailed it when making Ravenholm. Immediately upon starting the chapter, this unnerving sound plays and a couple of crows fly off in the distance. No combine radio chatter, no environmental sounds, just those two sounds. After they play, silence becomes the main background track, as the only thing you can hear is yourself. Your footsteps, weapon changing, interaction with the world around you, that becomes the main sound design. Of course there are some atmospheric wind sounds that play in the background, kind of like cave sounds from Minecraft, but they very rarely come up. It's really just you, the words of Father Gregory, and the wind as the main sound design of Ravenholm. Now let's actually talk about playing Ravenholm. Actually, playing Ravenholm is a different experience. It's unique, but it doesn't sacrifice gameplay for ideas. One of the first sections in Ravenholm is this shack warehouse wooded building with a ton of saws, boarded up with a ton of physics objects. Valve quite literally forces the player into using the gravity gun to progress in the chapter, which is a common theme you'll see in this chapter. There are a ton of physics objects and tools you can play around with using the gravity gun, with the most interesting being the saws located in the shack and other places. It shows that the gravity gun can also be used as a weapon using physics objects alongside the creative applications. Even though the level design isn't as open as earlier levels, it still allows you to learn and use the gravity gun to its fullest potential. The later levels expand on the creativity theme with more platforming and obstacles that require thinking, only further helping to give more leeway to allow the gravity gun to excel in an environment where it usually wouldn't perform well. As if the level design wasn't enough, the ammo for these weapons in these chapters seemed to be extremely scarce. I found myself often running out of revolver and SMG ammo, enough to the point where I just mostly started using the gravity gun. These levels remind me a lot of Portal, in a sense, where enemies like turrets aren't really the main focus of the player. Instead, progression using thinking is. It disrupts the run, think, shoot motto of Half-Life, but in a good way. I had the most fun just throwing physics props at zombies and actually finding my way around, instead of mindlessly shooting at enemies. It never at one point got too overwhelming for me, and no part thanks to the overwhelming amount of explosive barrels for some reason just lying around. It also becomes pretty clear why the close quarters apartment style was used for this chapter. If it wasn't, using these saws would be a lot more painful. Physics objects actually come back to you, thanks to the Boston, Massachusetts design of these levels. It's simple, but not overblown to the point where you can just kind of relax and take a break from the action. A great factor contributing to the mellowed attitude of Ravenholm has to be the actual enemies in the level who contribute to the difficulty. There are no combine, no man hacks, nothing like that. Just like they hunger, the main enemies in this chapter are zombies. Slow, slashing zombies. There's not much to say about them. They act in a typical way that a zombie would act, with some disturbing modifications like the sounds they make, although they do evolve. In this chapter, we are introduced to fast zombies and poison zombies, with the main purpose of their inclusion being to spice up the gameplay of Ravenholm. Hearing a fast zombie means you stop whatever you're doing and pull out whatever gun you have due to how fast and aggressive they are, and somewhat annoying. And poison zombies require more attention due to their health and amount of damage they deal. There are also head crabs, and they kind of tormented me. I don't want to give them any light. We're just going to skip past them. I also have to say that the gameplay never feels repetitive here, despite the somewhat straightforward design. The introduction of new things during this chapter, such as the shotgun and various zombie types, freshens up the gameplay. Not once did I feel bored during my playthrough of this chapter for this video, which I pretty much expected coming into the replaythrough. I've played this game 3 times at this point, and this chapter maybe 5 times, and I still don't know what to expect coming into it. Each experience provides a fresh, exciting playthrough, thanks to all the factors coming together to create one solid, cohesive experience. And hey, you know that eerie feeling that people always talk about when they describe the Source Engine? Like, you know, when people say that the Source Engine is naturally creepy for some reason? We may never truly know why the Source Engine gives off this vibe and if it was done intentionally, but Valve definitely knew about this feeling and used it to its advantage in Ravenholm. I'd say that Ravenholm is the closest Half-Life ever got to unfiltered raw Source Engine magic. When the constant distractions and action are removed, and we get this close to the Source Engine, if that makes sense, you can only get a chapter as weird and unsettling as We Don't Go to Ravenholm. I have my questions though. This was a weird chapter, I did say that. There aren't a lot of them, but I do have my questions. For one, what is the purpose of the chapter in this story? I mean, we come into the chapter after being separated from Alex and the goal of reaching Nova Prospect and saving Eli, but why Ravenholm? Would anything have changed if the hallway led to, let's say, Highway 17? The chapter makes sense gameplay-wise, but I just can't understand it story-wise, at least for me. My second question is the length of this chapter. Why is it so short? The only scary part about Ravenholm is actually how short it is. I mean, there's a grand total of 6 levels in the chapter. As a kid, I thought this chapter was extremely long, but now it's almost laughably short. Maybe it's to prevent burnout from this type of gameplay, but I would have liked to seen this chapter be a little bit longer. My final question has to do with the ending of this chapter and the weird subsection after it. This chapter ends very abruptly, or at least the real part of it does. You leave Ravenholm like 5 levels into it and have to deal with the usual root canal type gameplay for another level afterwards, which is still a part of the Ravenholm chapter. It's just super odd to me that we never got any closure on Ravenholm, Father Gregory. We just left as quickly as we entered the town. Ravenholm is also just never mentioned again in the game or the lore of Half-Life, which is a bit weird considering it seemed to have a reputation according to Alex. But that's a minor complaint. I'm just saying, why was the end so abrupt? And why is the gameplay after Ravenholm, the town, so strange? Did anybody think that, or was it just me? These questions come from a genuine place of love and interest, and shouldn't be taken as criticism though, so yeah. We Don't Go to Ravenholm is a weird but timeless chapter that made me fall even more in love with Valve. I wouldn't say it's the best chapter in this game, or Half-Life for that matter, but it's definitely the top 3 chapters in Half-Life 2, let's just say that. There's a reason it sticks with everybody that plays the chapter, and if we look past the zombies and headcrabs, we see a beautifully crafted masterpiece for a beautiful gun. If you ever wondered why people love Half-Life so much, look no further than this chapter. Thanks for watching. That's my video. Thanks for watching my video. It's a cool video. Yeah.